Hi, everybody. This is the Saturday reading session. We'll be starting in just a minute. We'll let people come in into the webinar first. Okay. So I am Monique. I am on the RSM planning team, and I want to welcome you to our Saturday reading session. We are going to have uh, seven authors read this afternoon, and I'm very much looking forward to it, as I'm sure you all are. First, a few logistics. You're welcome to use the chat to talk to each other and that in a respectful manner. We might have time for questions at the end. So if you do have a question, you can put it in the Q&A function, which will be in the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, or you can put it in the chat and just put a little question mark before it so it's obvious that it's a question for them. And without much further ado, we're going to go to the panel. They're going to go in the order that they were listed on the schedule. So first, we're going to have Antonia. Over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Antonia Aquilante. I write LGBTQ fantasy romance, and today I'm going to read from A Dance of Water and Air. It's one of my older books, but it just had a book anniversary this week, so I thought I would read. In this book, Prince Edmund is uh, he must make an alliance marriage with the queen of the neighboring kingdom, but when he gets there, things are very strange. And he ends up getting closer to the queen's brother Arden, and falling in love with him. And then he is accused of trying to assassinate the queen, and they have to go on the run and figure everything out. This snippet happens just as things are about to go wrong. Okay, so here we go. Fog had blanketed the castle for 3 days, and Arden was heartily tired of it. The fog was so thick and spread so far that he hadn't been able to go for his daily rides. Being kept from them was making him feel caged. All the castle's residents seemed to feel something similar. The whole place felt poised on the edge, waiting for the fog to lift, waiting for something to happen. Or perhaps Arden was being overly dramatic. The one good part of the fog was that he'd spent more time with Edmund over the last few days. He wasn't certain why they'd gravitated towards each other, but he wouldn't complain either. They'd found each other in the library early that morning and drifted to Edmund's sitting room, where they'd been ever since. Mostly they read or talked, sitting close together on the couch in front of the cheerful fire that kept the damp chill away. After a while, Edmund stood and wandered to one of the windows. He pulled back the curtains, which had been inexplicably closed the entire time Arden had been there, and stared out. Arden frowned. Are you all right? He asked, keeping his voice quiet. The muffle of the fog in the room lit only by fire and candles somehow called for whispers. I don't like this fog. Edmund seemed lost, almost fearful, but that couldn't be right. Arden set aside his book and unfolded himself from the couch. His steps were soundless on the thick carpets laid over the sitting room floor, but it felt more as if everything was dampened by the fog. Arden joined Edmund at the window, standing close at his side and looking out. He couldn't see anything, only a blank white wall of fog. It's like looking out into nothing, as if the world disappeared overnight and there's nothing there anymore. And if we step outside, we'll disappear too. Arden shivered at Edmund's whispered words, at the odd sense of foreboding they caused. He'd never thought of fog that way before, and he didn't much like thinking of it that way now. He liked even less how shaken Edmund looked. Arden understood now why the curtains were closed in the middle of the day, though it seemed not having to see the fog every moment was doing little to help Edmund. He suddenly wanted to make everything better for him, to wrap him up tight and snug and reassure him, comfort him until he no longer worried about whatever fancies being trapped inside so long had provoked. Edmund laughed quietly, but it sounded forced, and he didn't look at Arden. You must think I sound ridiculous. I think so too, but I haven't been able to shake this feeling. I don't think you're ridiculous. Arden took hold of the curtain and tugged it from Edmund's hand. He let it fall back across the window, shielding them from the sight of the fog. Edmund finally looked at him, blinking owlishly. But something in Edmund's eyes made Arden melt just a bit. He put a hand on Edmund's arm, biting back a gasp at how good it felt to touch Edmund, even so innocently. Edmund's eyes widened, but he didn't move. I don't think you're being ridiculous, Edmund. Not at all. They stood like that for, well, Arden wasn't sure how long, just looking at each other, their only contact his hand on Edmund's arm. Arden wanted so much to kiss Edmund, ached with the want of it, but he couldn't. He couldn't move away either. Pounding at the door made them both jump. Arden's hand fell from Edmund's arm, but still they stood together, still stared at each other. Dimly, Arden heard the door open and a murmur of voices, then soft footsteps coming closer. Excuse me, Your Highnesses, Edmund's secretary said. Prince Arden is needed urgently. Arden took a sudden, sharp breath and turned to Peregrine, who stood several feet away, his face blank. Yes, thank you. Edmund stepped away. I'm sorry, I have to go. Of course, I hope everything is all right. Me too. But he was more worried about how shaken Edmund still looked. Go on. If they've come looking for you, it must be important. I'll come back later. He didn't qualify his promise, though perhaps he should have. He only waited for Edmund's nod, then turned and strode from the room. Edmund let out a long, slow breath when the door shut behind Arden. Confusion churned in Edmund's stomach. What had just happened? The fog had put him in an odd mood these last few days. He'd never cared for the feeling that dense fog gave him, of everything disappearing, of being sealed in. It was terrifying in a way he couldn't articulate and embarrassed him so much that he didn't even try, except for today with Arden, because he trusted Arden, because Arden was probably his closest friend in the world now. Trust was difficult for someone in his position, but Arden understood that because he was in the same situation, or nearly so. And somehow, even with the hesitance to trust on both sides, they'd managed to forge a friendship, one that Edmund treasured. But when Arden touched him, just casually putting hand on his arm, everything changed. His stomach swooped, and heat raced through him at the press of Arden's graceful fingers. He and Arden had been so close to each other, and he'd known that they would kiss, just known. And he knew they shouldn't. He would soon marry Arden's sister. But he didn't feel desire for her, felt nothing for her. And if he thought about it, he hadn't felt anything so strong for anyone except Arden. He wanted Arden. He couldn't have him. The interruption was probably a lucky one, even if everything in Edmund screamed in frustration. He stared at the blue velvet of the curtains, willing himself to forget what it had felt like when Arden's hand had come to rest on his arm, meant as comfort, certainly, but turning into so much more. He could never have more with Arden. Perhaps he couldn't even remain friends with him. Edmund? He made an effort to school his features into neutral lines before he turned to Peregrine. Peregrine stood in the middle of the room, his posture as tentative as his tone had been. Yes? You and Prince Arden. Whatever Peregrine had been about to say was lost as the door banged open and guardsmen flooded the room. What is it? Edmund asked. Why are you barging in here? He'd barely gotten the questions out before two guards seized him, two others taking hold of his struggling Peregrine. Diego followed the guards into the room. What is the meaning of this? Edmund demanded. You're under arrest, Diego said. For what? Don't play dumb, Your Highness. Diego somehow made the honorific an insult. He looked around, ignoring Edmund. Take them to the dungeon and search these rooms. And that's that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Antonia. That was lovely. Alyssa, you're next.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Askani. I am the writer of Ethereal Darkness. I have written previously under the name of Len Derry, and I this is probably my most recent and famous work, Loyalty of Severus. It's Dune for trans girls. So here's the beginning of the book. Uh, in the annals of human history, men have always coveted that which they cannot possess. This was true when Varia was betrayed by her nephew and legal son. This was just as true when Gita and Caracalla visited New Brasilia. William Pleiades III, modern ascendancy of man. A martial scowl hung to Fola's dark-skinned face as she watched this hated wave of occupation sweep toward her. A host of bronze-armored soldiers marched in formation to herald the arrival of the insidious imperial assessor. Two banners rose from the diplomatic shuttle in unison, the inquiring stallion of House Gita and the blood-red talon of House Caracalla. Between the pair, a final, angular banner crept higher, allowing the two-headed eagle of the unnamed empire to menacingly screech at the dignitaries themselves. Fola stood tall, despite the assessor's host. Her hand never approached the dull ceremonial sword dangling from her hip. A slight breeze clinked the rings, gathering the braids of hair tumbling down her neck. The faint wind pushed the mass of her crimson cape hanging from her right shoulder, yet the gods failed to expose the asymmetrical shape of Fola's chest. Fola's militant stance clashed with that of her demure companion. Her cousin, the imperial widow Bassiana, wore a sleeveless purple dress with angular shoulders and a diamond neckline. Unlike the queen of New Brasilia, Bassiana wore her hair up, tied with interwoven ribbons of violet. More imperial legionnaires surrounded the stone platform, flanked on each side by a quarter of stern feminine guardians. The widow licked the shadowy stain of her lips before she spoke. I don't care for their early arrival. There is nothing we can do. Fola kept her brown eyes forward, leaving them fixated on the central banner. We must abide by imperial law if you are to succeed. A worried sigh crept softly from Bastiana's lungs. Will they ask about Varius? He is still young, and we aren't known for training men to fight. A momentary snarl touched the edge of Fola's mouth. Even with our present neighbors. If they discover quiet, Fola shifted her head away from the approaching standard. Sunlight caught the edge of her slender circlet. You worry too much for your son. He's your nephew. Shouldn't you worry for him too? Fola faced the coordinated horde as they approached, further blocking her from all but her closest defenders. Maybe, she said just before the regal title hardened her response. But I am also mother to every soul in this hemisphere, no matter how much blood we share. The imposing banners closed upon the platform, desperate for any reason to devour any remaining individuality from New Brasilia's soul. Both cousins remained silent, sharing in their dedication to holding back the imperial tide. Fola nodded to a pair of teenage girls wearing matching sleeveless white dresses. The girls lifted sloped, woven baskets and walked toward the transport. With every step, they forged a path of lush tropical leaves upon the otherwise droll path. Once the fresh scent of ripened melons filled the air, two imperial men emerged, standing side by side. No gust of wind, nor swell of heat, nor burst of sunlight turned either man away. The taller man wore centurion armor, engraved with a relief of a human warrior impaling one of the despicable nil. A neutral expression held his face as firm as chiseled stone. Stubble drew a shadow of a scalp upon his skull. His companion scowled before straightening the imperial stole around his shoulders and chest. Neatly trimmed brown hair avoided his ears and brow. Fola and Bassiana lowered their heads in a brief deferential bow. Their visible rank stood with the direct authority of the usurper. Fola forced the motion only as long as civility demanded. Fola breathed her last breath of compassion. Welcome, honored guest, to New Brasilia. Lord Gita, dispense with the formalities, the shorter man said after his name was spoken. Here to make my regular assessment. I need none of your, his nose flexed, local flavor. Patience, friend. The taller man kept his voice low. At least introduce me to these enchanting women. Fine, Gita huffed before opening his hand toward the queen. This is Fola, warrior champion of Queen New Brasilia. Before Gita could rush on, the taller man cordially reached for Fola's hand. She allowed the centurion's grasp as he lowered his head to kiss her palm and wrist. To visit your lands and your people is a privilege. Fola gave a slight nod, closing her fingers around the centurion's greeting. A brief snort burst from Gita's nostrils. This is the queen's sister, Bassiana, regent of House Severus. The tall centurion repeated the motions of his greeting for Bassiana. My lady, all of humanity still rejoices at your husband's virtues and victories. I regret never having served him. Pride swelled in Gita's face, cracked cracking his disdain. To you both I present Lord Chaim Caracalla, General of the 112th Legion and military aid to His Imperial Majesty. Long live Macrinus! Stoicism filled the height of Caracalla's martial disposition. Long live Macrinus! The cousins lowered their heads and spoke the reverie in unison. Long live Macrinus! Once they'd all spoken their loyalty to the imperator, the queen cracked the cordial silence. She forged a soft smile before she spoke. What brings a general of such rank to New Brasilia? Caracalla returned, full of smile. Highness, my assigned purpose here is to venture onward to sit in the fabled halls of your neighbor Sparta. Before that, I wish to observe the young heir left in your charge. A stern politeness stiffened Bastiana's tone. What interest do you have in my son? He is a citizen of the empire and heir to a noble house. I wish to see if he should be recommended to an academy for training and enlistment.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. And you were right on time. You got that perfectly. Just the absolute perfect time. Thanks. That was really wonderful and vivid. Serena, you're next.
Hello, let me start my timer just in case. Thank you, Rainbow Space Magic, and all of you who have attended to hear us read today. I'm Serena J. Bishop. I write primarily speculative fiction, science fiction with themes into biomedical, but also then drifting into paranormal, sort of the Venn diagram where they overlap. That's my favorite happy place. Today I'm going to be reading a passage from Project Orca. Orca is an acronym, which I'll explain later, not the cetacean. And it is book one in a series called The Kari Chronicles. It's a sci-fi thriller and spin-off of the Dreams trilogy, which is also speculative fiction, but also sapphic romance. This one, not so much the romance. To give you some background on the passage I'm reading, because it's the beginning of the book, but not the very beginning of the book. Kari, that's her. She's 18 and has paranormal abilities, like being a super genius and a telepath. She has uncontrolled telepathy, actually. And she is in New York City because the next day she has a job interview at INCOG, which is a neuroscience lab, located on billionaire Henry Wabawa's converted cruise ship, the Heinawai. Note, parts of this passage are thoughts of other people, and I will read that as a very harsh whisper, like this. So you know that's what the other people are thinking. Okay. The coming-of-age drama had the dumbest ending in all of dumb endings. She should have watched the dystopian dark comedy about artificial intelligence. At least that ending would have been realistic. Kari went down to the lobby, noted Gia wasn't behind the desk, and meandered out into the street. Then she staggered. So glad to be out of there. Feet hurt. I miss home. Liars! She should have known to prepare herself for the barrage of voices that assaulted her. Business people thinking about deals, bike messengers trying to avoid hitting pedestrians, homeless people hoping someone would acknowledge them, street musicians playing and praying for tips. It was all too much. She ran down the block until she found the haven of the park. It was a good thing INCOG was located elsewhere, because city living was not for her. On the other hand, a genuine New York City hot dog from the cart near the park entrance was right up her alley. After buying her dinner, she went into the park and found a quieter, shaded area with a bench to enjoy her meal. The city atmosphere was still present, but the only thoughts in her head were her own. And those thoughts were mostly about how yummy her hot dog was. Out of all the places in New York, this is your dinner? Kari recognized the voice and turned to see Gia, the hotel manager. Looped around her hand was a leash with a small, muddy-looking dog at the end of it. The maybe terrier pug looked at her with pleading eyes and licked its chops. I don't mind simple, she said with a broad smile, not taking her eyes off the dog. Gia lifted her foot to avoid the leash from tangling. And that officially makes you the complete opposite from the usual hotel clientele. Ridiculous requests are somewhat expected in the hospitality business, but sometimes the demands do get out of hand, especially on the boat. Did Gia mean the boat? Are you talking about the Hineaway? Indeed I am. You worked there? Gia nodded. The Hineaway was a very interesting place to work, and I saw the world. May I ask why you left? The little dog walked with her as she sat at the other end of the bench. I left because... How could I possibly explain this without scaring her? Kari's interest peaked now, but she couldn't let it show. Was it the no pets rule? I noticed that when I was researching the ship. That wasn't it. I was going to say that I started to get the feeling that something odd was going on. What do you mean? Gia bit her full lower lip and looked up at the elm giving them shade. Illegal. It's no proof. Paranoia. How do I say this? Okay, so as you walk around, take in absolutely everything. How the decks are divided, the people, the uniforms, everything. But also, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like, why do parts of the boat have armed guards? That doesn't seem too weird, Kari said. Some high schools in this country have armed guards. Plus, I'm pretty sure the Hineaway would be the target of pirates if they didn't have the means to defend themselves. But a motorized raft at midnight with no lights? Some areas of the boat also have retina scanners. Okay, both the midnight boat rides and that type of biometric security were a touch extreme. Do you think something shady is happening? I don't have any proof of that. But if there was, traveling the world is a great way to cover it up, don't you think? Gia stood from the bench and Ollie started to walk away, tightening the leash. Still, I wish you luck. Kari watched Gia's long, muscular legs walk a leisurely pace away as Ollie's short, fuzzy ones raced to catch up. She ate the rest of her dinner while she pondered Gia's observations. Secret levels? Armed guards? Retina scanners? One of those factors by itself would raise an eyebrow, but all three had Kari intrigued. What kind of ship was the Hineaway? End scene. So that was book 1, Project Orca, and book 2, Project Duplicity, actually comes out this November. So thank you.
Wonderful. That was really great. That was very intriguing. Thank you so much, Serena. And now we'll have Gabriel.
Hello, hi. Thank you for having me. I'm Gabriel Hargrave. I write queer fiction that tends to blend genres. My main series is sort of like sci-fi meets erotica meets noir mystery, with some dystopia thrown in for funsies. But I'm actually going to be reading from It Happened One Night, which might be getting a new cover later this year or early next year. It's the first book in a duology about a Reaper who, in the first book, there's a soul that he can't get to pass through her light to the next life. And his boss, the manager, which is basically death, tasks him to like keep track of her. And I'm gonna just read from the beginning scene when they first run into each other. But it is a T for T fantasy or supernatural, really, romance with some mystery thrown in there. Danica Stewart isn't looking where she's going, which is unfortunate for her because neither is the driver of the bus that hits her. It causes a mess and a stir, but I still have a job to do. so I can't worry about the crowd of people flocking around her or the bloody corpse she leaves behind. My goal is the soul inside what had once been a 32-year-old waitress from Buffalo. That soul can't even wait for me to shoulder invisibly through the gawking onlookers. Danica's spirit sits right up out of her mangled body and stares indignantly at the bus. Well, that's just fucking great. My boss hates when I'm late. I choke back the urge to tell her she's going to be very late and hold my hand out to her. There's no point in pissing her off with puns. Her file said she hates them. Shame, though, about the bus, I think, as she reluctantly grabs my hand and lets me pull her to her feet. She's pretty, with long blonde hair streaked through with a few grays and bright green eyes. She's tall and thick, with legs for days and a great ass. And who are you? She asks, tucking a ghostly strand of hair behind her ear. I'm no one, I say, ignoring the growing light behind me. Beyond it is wherever Danica is destined to go. Just here to help you along. To where? She looks down at her body, then, covering her mouth with a ring-covered hand as she watches the bus driver's futile attempt at CPR. Oh shit, that poor woman. Will she be okay? Um, she's in shock, obviously, and I know I should say something to help, but I'm not great at that. I've also never been one to hang around and chat once I've taken a soul. Reapers aren't supposed to do that, but she's my last job of the day, and what else am I supposed to do? Go back to my shitty studio apartment and watch TV, doom scroll through social media until I lose any shred of faith I had in humanity, jerk it to an endless stream of porn. Actually, that last one doesn't sound too bad. Danica rocks back and forth on her heels, trying and failing not to look at her own corpse. She's dead, isn't she? Yeah, yeah, you are, I say, with a sadness I'm surprised I actually feel. But it'll be okay, because once you go through that light, you'll be fine. What? She points a shaky finger at her body. I'm right here, so I can't be there. Stammering a bit, she backs away from herself, waving her arms like she's trying to ward something off. No, no, that's not me. It's not. I'm so sorry, Danica. Gesturing at her light, I add, whatever's through there will help ease the pain. She grabs my shoulders and shakes me, nearly rocking me into a woman who's frantically describing the horrific scene to 911. But I don't believe in anything. Where am I supposed to go? Where would you like to go? Back into my body, she exclaims, pointing down at herself. Yeah, that's the one place you can't go, so pick another. I'd like to speak. I swear to every god that has ever existed, I interrupt her, if the rest of that sentence is to your manager, I'll make sure you go somewhere really unpleasant. You can do that? Her eyes grow wide and her bottom lip trembles. No, I admit, adding, I didn't believe in anything either. Still don't, actually, even though I know the truth. Which is, she asks, super fucking complex. I hook a thumb over my shoulder where the light is beginning to grow. It's iridescent blue with these little gold sparkles. The light's never the same. It supposedly represents a person's true nature, but I've been doing this job for 11 years and have never been able to figure out what the colors mean. You just step through there and you'll be wherever you're supposed to end up. Danica looks at me suspiciously. Do you know what's in there? Nope, and I don't care. I've got places to go and people to see, I lie. Can you go with me? Can't and won't. I wrap my hand around her wrist and she tries to bat me away, but I hold fast. You're going and that's final. Now come on. After pulling her towards the light, I nudge her forward, my hands gently pushing on her shoulders. She digs in her heels and I imagine the sound of scraping on the asphalt as I press her closer to her final resting place. Danica turns around and slaps me, her eyes practically drilling holes into me. I'm not going. You have to. She crosses her arms over her ample chest and scoffs, oh, and why do I have to? I mumble something she can't hear. When she raises her eyebrows and stares me down, though, I repeat, if you don't, you end up like me. Danica's eyes take me in from head to toe. The shaggy brown hair, the dull gray eyes, the short frame made only a little taller because I put risers in my shoes. I only had 3 soles today, so I hadn't even bothered dressing up. My baggy band t-shirt and jeans look worse for wear because I just picked them up off my floor and tossed on a pair of Doc Martens. Her plump lips turn down in a frown, then back up into a small smile. I don't know, she says. Kind of cute. No, I roll my eyes at her obvious attempt to butter me up. No flirting with your Reaper. Ugh, come on, she stamps her foot. Can't blame a girl for trying. Yeah, well, even if you actually meant it, I can't do anything to change what happened, so let's go. I twist her around and shove her towards the light. She gives one last look at her body, then at me, then shuffles sullenly through the blue and gold shimmer in the middle of Elmwood Avenue. Or at least she tries to. She bonks face first into some sort of barrier. What the fuck? She cries. My thoughts exactly, but I don't say that out loud. Try again, just maybe with your hands in front of you this time. Oh, so I break my wrists, she snaps. You're already dead, Danica, I remind her. Can't really do any damage to yourself. She holds her hands out in front of her and pushes on the light, which she shouldn't be able to do. Maybe there's nothing there for me, she suggests. Told you I didn't believe in anything. Everyone has an afterlife, I tell her. For a few moments, she says nothing, just traces her finger along the swirling patterns of her light. When she finally speaks again, her voice is a low, choked gasp. It doesn't want me. She hangs her head, and I pretend I can't hear her crying. Instead, I step up beside her and gingerly poke the light. Solid. My gut twists. These things aren't supposed to be solid. Something is severely fucked up.
Thank you so much. That was great. That was lovely. Thanks so much. And now we'll have Kristen.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kale Noone, or Kristen. I'm published with JMS Books, and I write a lot of romance, paranormal, fantasy, things that use my medieval studies PhD for fantasy romance purposes, medieval werewolves sometimes. In the day job, I teach college students about Shakespeare and werewolves and monsters, and I get paid to do it, so it's a lot of fun. This particular story is something that's actually very new, as in not even out yet. It will be out on the 18th, and it's something I think of as very Susanna Clarke, sort of Hope Mirrlees, kind of Jane Austen, but with ghosts and mediums. Jane Austen plus supernatural, if you were supernatural fans back in the day. And in this case, much more queer. It's called The Presley Ghost, and this is the opening. A ghost had appeared, again, in the churchyard of the village of Presley, at sundown, on a cool night full of bonfire leaves and rustling branches. This time it had startled an elderly woman next to her deceased husband's grave. It reportedly winked at her, and gave a distressingly flirtatious wave, before vanishing in a swirl of mist and a flutter of cold wind, an old-fashioned greatcoat. Everyone in the village agreed that ghosts, whether handsome young men or not, ought not be allowed to frighten kindly old widows, particularly kindly old widows who made the best apple cider in the county, and therefore something ought to be done. A self-selected delegation accordingly consulted with the new rector upon a cloudy, autumn-scented afternoon. The new rector in question, having acquired the livings of Presley and Marinborough only a month previously, was young and serious and determined to do his best. He therefore offered, "Very well, tell me any details about your apparition," while his brother sighed and poured another cup of tea and put extra sugar into it, with the air of a man preparing fortifications. "Well, it can't be permitted," explained the mayor of Presley, with self-importance swelling from his expansive waistcoat. "We do not want it," agreed the glove-maker, waving an expensively clad finger. Presley, aside from the apple cider, was known for luxury items of a delicate nature, gloves, lace, underthings, sources of wealth, and well-guarded trade secrets. Ghosts are not good for business. "And," said Miss Primrose of the Select Academy for Young Ladies, "ghosts are unseemly, particularly this one. He dresses in the fashions of 50 years ago, and once he kissed his fingertips in the direction of Miss Isley, and she fainted." "Was Miss Isley horrified by his flirtation or his fashion choices?" asked the rector's brother, not even under his breath, and ate the last ginger biscuit without offering it to a guest. His brother said, "Charles," and moved the biscuits away. "The heart of the matter," the mayor said, meaningfully, "is that we cannot have a flirtatious, poorly dressed, interfering ghost in Presley." "But a well-behaved, fashionable ghost would be acceptable?" "Charles." "In fact," put in the schoolmaster, "ghosts truly ought not to exist, if one follows rational principles. The natural sciences would suggest they cannot speak without the organs to do so, and the mathematics of instantaneous vanishing seem implausible at best." Everyone regarded him with some sympathy at this dour proclamation. He gave up and concluded, well, therefore something ought to be done about it, and gulped tea. Very well, said Charles, with a look at his brother, which John returned more sharply. What would you like us to do about it? Well, you are our resident experts upon the supernatural, the ungodly, the extraordinary powers, are you not? The mayor folded both arms and scowled at his supposed supernatural experts across the tea table in the overcrowded sitting room. You are meant to be of use in laying spirits, quieting the restless, silencing the undead. A ghost is, by definition, more or less dead, observed Charles, just to clarify. Miss Primrose had, like much of Presley, over the last few weeks, occasionally thought him handsome, with that perpetually slightly disheveled brown hair, those bright green eyes, those cheekbones, but he had returned no one's interest in any detectable way, and in any case, at the moment, she was finding Charles extremely irritating. So, John said, you want us to handle your ghost. Well, it is your duty, even more your responsibility, to Presley, to the parish, to, I dare say, the world. The world, Charles echoed. Good heavens, as it were. Do you recall, John said, not really under his breath, that time I put flour in your favorite hat? Behave. Everyone paused again to consider their new rector's propensity for practical jokes and retaliation. John gave up. All right, I agree we can't have your people in danger, and if the ghost itself is unhappy, something ought to be done for it. And for the village. Indeed it should, huffed the mayor. As clearly you can see. All right, John said. Charles, what do you think? And his voice was different this time, less scolding, more of a question, maybe even concern. Charles waved a hand, mostly as an excuse to pick up the last chocolate biscuit as well. You already know my answer. I do not, John said, and I would like to hear you say it. This time Charles gave him a small shrug and a weightless smile. Well, of course I'm agreeing. For the sake of the world, naturally. John's own eyebrows were making a dark, worried line, but he sighed and nodded. We'll see what we can do. Well, your parents, said the mayor, would have been fascinated. A new entry in the series of books, a disquisition. Not that we wish to be famous for a ghost, indeed not, but perhaps for the successful banishing of a ghost. Yes, Charles said, getting up. A sudden pistol-shot breach of etiquette in the negotiation of tea and biscuits. Thank you, and we'll deal with your ghost. Good day. He even made a gesture towards the door, in case anyone had missed the dismissal, and then leaned in the doorway after, as everyone trailed out, to ensure that they'd gone. When he came back, John had also stood up, disregarding the help of the cane, and leaning on the back of the closest comfortable chair, and regarding him with irritating insight. Charles snapped, What? Well, you didn't have to bodily throw them all out. Poor Miss Primrose. Don't exaggerate, and don't look at me like that. They brought up our parents, John said. And there's no need to bring that up, and it's none of their business. Charles wanted this to be definitive. It was not, because he heard his own defensiveness. But he could not say everything he was thinking, not to his brother, and that unfortunately too forgiving heart. So he went to find the brandy on the sideboard and poured a hearty amount into his tea. It did not taste especially appealing, but that was the point. It wasn't your fault, John said. It isn't, and you don't have to just tell me what you need me to do. I need you to talk to me. Charles finished the rest of the terrible brandy and tea concoction. Well, I am. You're not listening. First you want me to talk, and then listen. Which is it? Charles. I'd do anything you ask, Charles said. You know I would. Every time, at Oxford, at Dean, here, if you tell me you want to protect villagers from a drowning spot, or from stone-throwing angry poltergeists, or just from a apparently unfashionable churchyard ghost, I'll do that. You never have to ask. Anything, is that clear enough? And he turned away from the silent accusation of John's cane, from the scrape of branches across the window and his heart. I'll go for a walk. I'll see if I can find your ghost. I might be able to handle it on the spot. It doesn't sound like a difficult one. You could wait, but Charles left without looking back. Outside, the Whitbin bit his arms like the fangs of tiny needle-mouthed spirits. The afternoon crackled toward evening in sharply outlined colors and shapes. Gunmetal gray, the black lines of trees, the swinging painted lines of village shops, solid rooftop and gold from windows. The air tasted like chimney smoke and harvests. Charles shivered because he had not brought a coat, and his shirt sleeves and waistcoat were not warm enough, but he deserved that, so he didn't turn around. He should go back. He should apologize to John, or he should go and see about the ghost, which might be a relatively simple task, of course, generally speaking. He should discover a means of moving through time to ensure that pain and grief and loss had not happened. He should tell his younger self to conceal, to hide, to pretend, so none of this had come to pass. Because he could do none of those, he turned away from the village and went for a walk instead. He did not have a destination in mind as such, but the path meandered over autumn crunchy ground and a deceptively thin but very deep treachery of river crossed by stones. Eventually he found an old stone wall and leaned against it, looking at the water, the village, the fields, and the steeple, without seeing any of it. John wanted him to talk. There was nothing left to say. He stared into the water again. No escaping water, apparently. It churned and bubbled and frothed. Well, said a new voice, don't do that if that's what you're thinking. I wouldn't advise it. And Charles turned because the cold hadn't just been cold, and the hair was standing up along his arms and at the back of his neck. The young man standing there was perhaps a few years younger than Charles himself, and smiling. He was leaning against the wall as well, but leaning was not the correct term, given that the man's elbows were transparent and slipping in and out of rock, and his old-fashioned full-skirted coat swung in ripples, as if it were gauze and not green velvet. He had blonde hair the color of sunlight, and brown eyes that were almost gold, and his face would have made sculptors fall to both knees, if not for the delicate outlines of trees and fields through the shape of him. The young man said, well, I could try to pull you out if you jumped in, but I'm not good at much beyond small objects. But I would try. You're the ghost. Oh, so you've heard of me. Weren't you in the churchyard? I was in the churchyard, the ghost said helpfully. But now I'm here, talking to you.
That was great. Thank you so much. Chloe, it's your turn next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chloe Spencer. I'm an author primarily of horror fiction, and I focus in sapphic horror fiction. But today I'm actually going to be reading from my first YA horror novella, which is called Code Skull. It released with Maddox Media in June. And it's set in the 1990s. It's kind of Goosebumps inspired, and it's about a group of kids who they have to team up to stop this demon from taking over their hometown after they unleash him from a cursed video game. And so I'm going to be reading a small section from chapter 2, which is when they get into playing the cursed video game. When her older brother Liam went to St. Olaf, Tanner moved into his former bedroom, which was in the attic. Earlier that summer, Mick and Tanner had plastered the space with posters and hung beaded rainbow curtains from the rafters which separated the bedroom from the study, or the area that Tanner kept her books in the old Dell Optiplex that her parents had gifted her so long ago, after they couldn't figure out how to use it. Although dated by 1998 standards, Opti was affectionately referred to as their mutual bestie. From Friday nights spent typing up stories in WordPerfect to exploring countless games, he was firmly a part of their life and friend group. When Mick leaned over to put the floppy disk in the drive, she patted the monitor. Good Opti. My computer isn't a dog. Tanner retrieved a box of tissues from her nightstand and trotted over. She blew her nose 3 times, each sounded as stuffy as the last. Mick didn't pay any attention to her. Tanner grimaced as she sat down beside her friend. Outside, a thunderstorm rumbled, its energy rattling the windows. I hope we don't lose power, Tanner grumbled. The computer clicked in Word, attempting to load the game. Within a few moments, the program loaded. A string of glimmering lime green letters sashayed across the upper part of the screen. Code Skull. I've never heard of this one, Tanner said as she chucked her used tissues in the waste bin. Must be old. What's it about? I don't know. Tommy didn't give me the box, only the case. Why don't you take the game from him if you don't know what it's about? I mean, what if it's boring? Mick grinned. What if it's not? She cracked her knuckles, then her neck, before settling her hands on the keyboard, coated in its familiar stickiness, courtesy of a spilled soda can once or twice. Tommy said it scores you based on how good your decisions are. Like, you make a smart choice, you get like 100 points. A bad one, you lose points. He wanted me to beat his score. Tanner's eyes flitted over to the Kit Kat clock ticking on her wall, its tail sashaying from side to side. What was his score? Like 9,000 or something. Are we gonna be here all night? Tanner squirmed in her seat. I thought you and I were gonna catch that showing of Halloween H2O tonight. That's supposed to be a bad film, anyways. Tanner's bushy eyebrows set in a firm line. She scoffed and leaned back in her chair. Mick elbowed her. Hey, we'll check this game out, and if it sucks, we'll quit, okay? Fine. The displeasure did not erode from Tanner's face. Mick rubbed her hands together excitedly before she pressed the enter key. On the screen, words materialized and after a few seconds formed a dense paragraph against the solid black background. Welcome to Code Skull. I am pleased to meet you. Are you ready to begin? Mick took a deep breath before typing in her response. Yes, if you are so sure. You're about to embark on a spine-tingling adventure unlike any other. Throughout the game, I will be grading the intelligence of your choices based on how you respond to certain situations. The smarter your decision, the better your score. How could I even make that determination? Tanner muttered, unimpressed. No code could possibly be sophisticated enough to do that. Do you not remember System Shock? Mick asked. Tanner shuddered, hugging her knees to her chest. I try to forget, but Shonen speaks to me in my nightmares. But System Shock came out in '94. I thought that this game was like way older than that. Dude. Mick gripped the mouse a little too tightly. Are you going to keep bugging or are we going to play this game? Continue, princess. Mick glanced back at the screen. A new block of text appeared. It's very important to ask my permission before exiting the game so that I can save your place. Do you understand? Mick responded, yes. Excellent. Allow me to set the scene. A whooshing sound echoed from the speakers, and Mick couldn't tell if it was meant to mimic wind or water crashing over rocks close to shore. The screen remained black. Tanner wrinkled her nose. Did it break already? Mick clicked the mouse a few times, trying to get the game to respond. Patience. We have to set the scene. Mick's eyebrows rose. Wicked. You are a traveler, but you are not alone. You have a companion with you. Is this companion friend or foe? Ooh, this is a cool choice, Mick said, her fingers grazing the keyboard. What do you think, Tanner? You want to be the friend or the foe? Friend, Tanner said. Mick typed in the response. Friend. Nice of you to have a friend to accompany you on this ominous night, what with the rain pounding on the windows. Tanner pushed her glasses up her nose again and glanced to the window, which was streaked with raindrops. Somehow, in their frustration to set up the game, they hadn't noticed that it had finally started raining. You and your companion are weary, traveler. You've been walking through the forest of darkness for several hours by now. But as you round another winding corner, you come across a home. Graphics emerged. A plethora of dark trees, pixelated and grainy, surrounded the edges of the screen. In the center, a small trail, trodden with digital Kelly green grass, led the winding way to a buttercup yellow house. The image rested on the screen for so long that Mick pressed the enter and arrow keys, trying to see if there was a way that she could propel the character forward. After pressing the up arrow, her character emerged from the shadows of the trees, walking forward. The character had long brown hair and blue clothing. As she held down the arrow, another character materialized with cropped blonde hair and pink clothing. Tanner arched her brow. I thought that this game was text-based. I guess not, Mick said. I mean, I didn't get much of a chance to talk to Tommy before he told me he had to bounce. Why did he have to bounce? Something about taking care of his little sisters or whatever? Mick attempted to press the down arrow to see if her character would go backwards, only to be met with a lecturing line from the game. Now. I didn't say you could turn back, did I? You started it, you finish it. Unless, of course, you ask for permission to save your place. Mick frowned. Kinda weird. Really? You've played a lot more RPGs than me. I thought if your character wasn't supposed to go in a certain area, the game was supposed to tell you not to do that. Usually a game doesn't outright tell you that. It puts up a wall or an object in the pathway. I can't remember the last time a narrator would have said something to me. Mick scratched her head. Maybe it's trying to, what would our teacher call it? Break. Miss Lewinsky would say that it breaks the fourth wall? Yeah, maybe it's trying to do that. Ooh, Tanner said, and for the first time since they had sat down to play, her eyes sparkled with excitement. Kind of like in Ferris Bueller? Yeah, that's kind of dope. It wasn't completely unusual to Mick that a video game would try to throw a curveball or two like this. She remembered playing through Castlevania Symphony of the Night on the PlayStation and how the castle had completely flipped upside down at a certain point, forcing her to replay the game. If anything, seeing how weird this was, it sunk in that this was going to be good. And served as an annoying reminder that maybe Tommy Perlazza had good taste. Glued to the edge of their seats, the girls leaned closer to the computer screen. Outside, rain continued to pitter-patter against the windows, its pace increasing. Tanner looked outside and shuddered. It's getting pretty bad. Are you going to be okay to ride your bike home later tonight? Mick didn't even acknowledge the question. Tanner realized her friend either didn't hear her or was so not concerned in that moment. Pressing the up key again, Mick guided her characters down the pathway. Pixelated and grainy trees fell to the wayside and the house loomed bigger and bigger. The camera doesn't even cut away, it just zooms in, Mick said. That's so cool. Now that they were closer to the house, their characters had more details too. The brunette had small flecks of red across its chest, resembling a pattern. The other character, the blonde, had yellow stripes on its abdomen. Tanner gasped. Dude! What? Dude, that's us. And that's what I got.
Awesome. That was terrific. Thank you so much, Chloe. I think I'm going to get that for my nephew for Christmas. Thomas, you are our next one. Thank you so much.
Right. Well, hello. I'm Thomas Wrightson. I'm an author of science fiction fantasy. My current series is... Get up there. It's not working. Damn it. Okay, The Cluster Cycle, published by Ronan Weatherford. I was trying to hold up the books. This is an excerpt from the next one in the series. No date, I'm afraid, yet. The Murderer's Lament, a lesbian-led tribute to the golden age of detective writers. And in this scene, our protagonist Sedna is settling down to a meeting with her new client. Sienna motioned Sedna into the chair opposite him, offered her refreshments, then dismissed Kashkia with a wave of the hand. When they were alone in front of the artificial fire in the damp room with its shelves of digital books, Sedna waited for a bombshell to fall. Her host placed his fingertips together, leaned back, and closed his eyes before speaking. "What is your opinion of my guests?" Sedna considered carefully before answering. "A mixed assortment. That Feles couple, the Shakiriv, are pure pretension. Dysart is troubled and has a hard time being normal. The Felas ambassador is always putting on a show, and it's beginning to tell. Jaquis is a lot of bluster and not particularly sympathetic, but has cunning. Vaughan is a deep one, and more clever than she wants others to know." An excellent summing up. But you left out Kashkia. Kashkia is loyal. Is that all you have to say? Yes. Sedna dare not imply more, for she knew something of Sienna's history. Now tell me, what's this about? Did you get attacked by a ship on your way here? Sedna stifled a startled movement. Yes, professionals of a sort, but slapdash, I saw them off. As expected. They were from the Ru'ubaf Syndicate. Raiders by profession, killers in truth. I wondered what would happen when I released the guest list to those I had invited and booked you on a certain transport with little time to act. It would have reached certain ears. And you didn't warn me? Best not to prejudice the result before the examiner arrives. Care to explain why? Sienna leaned forward slightly. Hishkria ji kutro. I am a judge of character unmatched, and though we have not had a lot of contact, I know you have a shrewd sense for the truth. I must tell you that one of those in this house, with the exception of yourself and Hiakana, is planning to kill me. Sedna couldn't restrain herself. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. I knew it. I felt something wrong, but not the specifics. How do you know this? What comes in the next... What comes in the next 3 weeks will determine the future of the cluster. I know full well that there are extreme factions on both sides who would rather see my casting vote removed permanently. I know for a fact, through a few sources, that there is someone out for my life. I narrowed it down to a few names. I invited them here, and also invited you. Why? Well, I have suspicions. I wanted a second opinion before starting an official investigation, or resolving the matter privately. This issue impacts the Synod, and through them the entire cluster. This cannot be taken lightly. Sure it can't, so why call just me? This isn't a private matter, Sienna. This is a matter for the Synod enforcers, for the proper authorities. I have no proof to show them. But you're putting your own life at risk. Sienna gave a sad smile. I have put my life at risk from the very moment I became a senior Synod executive. They have notoriously short lifespans. Sienid, this isn't rational. Yes, you risked your life through your position, but you've always been the sensible type. Why change now? Maybe I have a new influence in my life? Cyanid stared directly at Sedna. I will tell you more about that tomorrow. In the meantime, I must tell you this. That raider attack was deliberate. It arrived too quickly to be anything else. Someone with the right connections sent those rogues after that shuttle. Likely they meant to have you killed, or at least abducted and held, until any planned relation to me had matured. They knew of you, knew of your acumen, and saw you as a threat. Luckily they underestimated you. So that's what you tested? Yes. You have a presence in the minds of the political elite. You have the blood of many on your hands in your role as a murderer, and thanks to others still you have served in that capacity. You know that's not what murderers do. We don't act as private investigators or as assassins. What are you asking me to do, Cyanid? If I am alive, to exact truth. Don't you mean justice? I always imagined you would know a distinction between truth and justice. But maybe that is not something to discuss today. Instead, I beg your promise on one matter. Cyanid reached out and placed a hand on Sedna's own. The first touch was an awkward fumble, but then the grip became sure and strong. Sedna looked into those pale eyes that saw little to nothing, listened to that soft voice which rocked entire planets when used at the right time. If anything happens to me, please investigate. Even if the official forces are involved, I want your eyes to contribute to their findings. I want you to discover the truth. Sedna wanted to say something other than what she did say. Of course. There was nothing more to say. Cyanid summoned Kashkir and Sedna was shown out and up to her room. Hyrcana was waiting, already in her pajamas and looking out of the windows at the beautiful sky. It was illuminated today by the moon's parent planet, and an eerie bluish light shone on everything. Sedna walked up beside her and stood for a time in silence. I don't like this. Hyrcana turned to her partner. Do you not like the situation? Yes, I feel the same. What did Cyanid say? Sedna described her interview with their host, and Hyrcana's eyes widened. But surely he must be mad not to call in the authorities, and to rely on a murderer to resolve a matter is sheer lunacy. Stopping assassinations is not in your purview. I know that. I can't reason with him. Sorry. I know that. I can't reason with him. He's not used to taking orders from anyone. He plays his own game, a game with planets as pieces on the board. Do you think anything will happen? I don't want to think about it. Sedna sighed and put an arm through Hyrcana's. I just want to get myself ready for bed. Sleep it off and wait to see what tomorrow brings. And pray this trip doesn't end in disaster.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom.
Sorry for the stumbles.
It was lovely. Oh, and that is the end of our reading session. I want to thank all of you so much for taking part in this. This was just a delightful selection of stories to hear from you all, and I really appreciate it. A couple of you have already put the links to what you read in the Slack, or sorry, in the Discord. If you haven't, please go ahead and do that so that everybody knows where to find your work. Coming up next, we will have a panel in half an hour on, let me get the title right, Defining Genres, Do We Need It? So that will be coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern. You'll need to figure out what that means for you personally. Meanwhile, the discussion continues in the Discord, and we have a full day of panels and another reading block tomorrow. So thank you all for now. Bye-bye.